Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to introduce and bring to us this morning Reverend Father John Patrick Ngoyi. Good morning, sir, and welcome. Over to you, sir.
So thank you very much for that lengthy introduction. I wonder if I really fit those big shoes. I do express my thanks to Scale for inviting me to share a few ideas based on our experience in Ijebode. I'm sorry I may not show my picture because my connection is also not very stable. I prefer to allow you to listen to my voice rather than seeing my face. My job is to give a few ideas that we are to share our experiences and as well as design a way forward for effective transformation of our society the way we really want it. So the civic and legislative advocacy, the Nexus. Yeah, we're saying advocacy refer to the various strategies we devise, actions taken, and solutions proposed to influence decision-making that end up affecting the greatest majority of the people. So it is an activity carried out aiming at influencing public officials. We're very specific. We want to influence public officials and members of government to promote and secure the passages of policies, bills, laws, and of course, we want to aid decision-making. Basically, we are talking about an activity that argues in favor of something such as a cause, an idea, or a policy. Advocacy occurs whenever an individual or a group of individuals engage in dialogue about an issue they care so much about it. So it's not just enough for you to have an idea, for you to have a concern. Again, you should be able to get that issue registered on the public agenda so that it draws the attention of the decision makers. Next slide, please. So why do we really engage in advocacy? We engage in advocacy because we want to change the status quo. We are living a situation that is not favorable to most of us. We are facing a situation we are not all happy about. So we want that status quo to be changed. So the action to be taken in order to achieve that kind of change is what we call advocacy. So the major reason for advocacy is to effect a positive change, a change that will be beneficial to the majority of the people. Next. Now, I'm referring you to Amartya Sen. He's a winner of 1998 Nobel Prize in Economic Science in his book, Development as Freedom. Amartya Sen said, look, I can appreciate the force of the claim that people themselves must have responsibility for the development and change of the world in which they live. The freedom to lead the lives they have reason to value. So you and I, our entire community, we have some of that things we value. We have the kind of life we want to have, we want to lead. So this is what Amartya Sen as an economist said, and he won a Nobel Prize of Economics for that. But I said, that is beautiful. A beautiful and indeed a tall dream by the Nobel Prize winner. How will this be achieved when the power holders are not ready to let their much entrenched interest go? Continue the next slide. You want a change? The beneficiaries of the status quo will not let their interest go. How do you go about achieving the kind of change you want? Right. If you look at the last slide, we're talking about Amartya Sen, who was actually dreaming for all of us, appreciating his dream of having people to dream to get the kind of work, the kind of life they want to live in. The next slide, following this, Shola, you know that guy. His name is Karl Marx. Most of you who have done history will know it. Karl Marx said it is absolutely impossible for the power holders to let go their interests. He advocated, he pushed for a class struggle. He was talking about the proletariat organizing themselves to challenge the power holders so as to change the whole system. But look, you and I, you know the reality. We have been activists on most part of our lives. We know what force versus force has been leading to. Advocacy would like this approach to be changed. Next slide. We engage in advocacy now because there is a new paradigm development. Sustainable development goals. We want a change that will be sustainable. We want a change that is inclusive. In the era of sustainable development goals, the various stakeholders have a role to play. Leaving no one behind means whether people belong to government or the private sector or the civil society, we need to get everybody on board. Yes, the next slide is it. To change to be sustainable, you need public policy. In other words, if we are busy implementing short actions, helping a farmer with small seeds today, but how long will you continue providing seeds to farmers? For that action to be sustainable, to be lasting, you need public policy. Public policy that will demand that all the stakeholders be involved and be included. Therefore, we need to foster relationships across the various social actors, including government, private sector, academia, and other non-governmental organizations. We need to innovatively design new ways of governing ourselves, use and share common resources, and how we create harmony between people of different wealth, culture, and religion. We have only one world. We have to live. All of us need to live in it. So we don't have to kill each other. We have to find ways of accommodating each other. Even though no single group can bring about social transformation on its own, we need to know that this being true, the power and resistance of one single group can be enough to block the actions of all others. The new approach is multi-stakeholder partnerships. Multi-stakeholder partnership. Everyone who has a stake in the kind of change I'm advocating for must be involved. Because the one you leave outside can cause problem to the kind of change you want to see happen. Next slide, please. To achieve the sustainable change we all desire, Amartya Sen says people have the right to desire a change. Yes. To achieve that change, we need to find ways for creative dialogue and alignment across different sectors of the society. We need to develop shared perspectives, new understanding, and collective commitment for action, even between groups who may at first seem to have diverging interests or in conflicts. To tackle real developmental problem and contribute significantly to achieving real change, civil society groups, you and I, must learn to work together with groups and people from different organizations, with different backgrounds, different interests, different values, different responsibilities, technical language, communication style, and constraint. We need to do that if at all we were pursuing a change that will be sustainable. Now, the setting policy agenda for sustainable change. Here, I would like to challenge us to the fact that we need always to distinguish three levels for setting a policy agenda for either SC can be sustainable change or civil society. Where there is no policy, remember, nothing will be sustainable if there is no policy for development. So if anything at all is very important and critical, the first thing to watch for is the existence of a policy. Where there is no policy, we need policy entrepreneur. We need innovators. Yes, policy entrepreneur following the model of economic entrepreneur. An entrepreneur does not rest until he achieves his goal. The goal of ensuring that an activity that is so important for the well-being of the majority of the citizens has not been encapsulated into a policy by those who must deliver development, the state government, the government per se. A social and policy entrepreneur will fight, organize himself, mobilize people to ensure that there is a public policy to guide that action. Number two, second level, there may be an existing policy, but that policy does not cover everybody. That policy is not inclusive. That policy has excluded a certain category of people. For example, you may have a policy that does not even acknowledge that we are having 19% of disabled people in the country. That's a policy existing, but inadequate. So our policy advocacy should ensure that there is a policy reform for that existing policy to become inclusive. So do we need policy reformers where we have policies that are inadequate? Number three, we have a policy. This is the case most of the time in our dear country, Nigeria. We are not suffering from lack of policy. We are not suffering from lack of good policies at all. We have some good policies, but good policies for no one. So there is still an issue of advocacy there. The advocacy here is for the implementation of that existing policy. So activist advocates for policy implementation are required. Let's move to the next slide, please. So let's keep those three levels. Where there is no policy, fight for there to be a policy. Where there is inadequate policy, fight for the reformation of that inadequate policy. And where there is a very good policy, fight for that policy to be implemented. Next slide, please. Most of us, you and me inclusive, we sin by ignoring this policy framework. When we say we want change, we design messages to achieve the change. But those messages we are designing, for whom are they? Are they for the public? Are they for influencers? Are they for decision makers? You cannot design the same message for market women and take the same message for labor leaders. Now, the communication you are giving to labor leaders cannot be the same for parliamentarians. But And yet, the kind of change we want, we desire, will require action to be taken for and by the public, for and by the influencers, for and by the decision makers. Now, look on the vertical axis, the vertical side. Sometimes we think, oh, these people, yeah, we have spoken to them, but nothing is happening. My friend, you spoke to them. You raised awareness. You published a book. Did the people tell you they accepted what you told them? Did they tell you you convinced them? Well, so you create awareness first. Let the people tell you, yeah, you have been able to convince them. Could they believe in what you have said? And of course, once people have listened to your message, once they have agreed with you, they can be prepared to take action. But remember, those three levels of change on the vertical side are required for both the public, the influencers, and the decision makers. So we can situate ourselves to assess and examine the kind of success we have when we say we are doing advocacy. Whom did we talk to? Which message did we carry out? Did we bring the appropriate message to the appropriate quarters? Did we receive any reaction from them? Before we begin asking whether they have taken action or not. Yeah, you see, based on what we just presented to you, the three levels required for policy advocacy, and of course, what is required by the policy framework, where you have in the public, the influencers, and the decision makers on the horizontal side for the audience, and on the vertical side for the kind of change we are advocating for. You have the awareness or the knowledge, you have the will, the acceptance, and you have the action to be taken. These efforts, we have also been struggling within JDPC, and this is where I'm going to land so that we have time to share experiences with one another based on what you have been doing. We also have to learn from you. The JDPC advocacy strategy. Next slide, please. You see, for example, for many years, we have been struggling to ensure that in Ogun State, we get a law passed to protect the people with disability. It never worked until we found a way of bringing the various sectors of the disability, had 3 days strategic planning with them, and then they were released to go and meet the influencers. Met the influencers, they had rallies to sensitize the masses, and of course they went as far as the State House of Assembly, the governor, the obas. The end result didn't make itself wait. Within 3 months, the bill was passed. Now we are struggling to ensure that that bill, which is a good policy, is now implemented. We also worked with SPAC on the issues of improving maternity through obstetrics. But we got the traditional rulers, the nurses, the doctors, government officials, all of them came on board. The end result is government was able to prioritize the improvement of the healthcare facilities. To say, yes, when there is coming together, where there is collective action taken by activists advocating, change is possible. But alone, no one of us can ever achieve the kind of change we want. Next slide, please. You see, at JDPC, our years of experience in engaging other groups of the civil society have taught us that we are more effective in achieving the change we want if and when we engage and collaborate transparently and effectively with other CSOs. We have discovered that we can change our society by finding new ways to collaborate and make collective demands, including online. The greater challenge remains, however, the capacity to convene and associate with other social actors in the civil society, those in government, the private sector, and academia. Now that they have recognized the need to work together to tackle the challenge of modern Nigeria and the world and bring about change for the common good. Remember the Sustainable Development Goal process. At the level of United Nations, there have never been such a process. I happen to have been part of the negotiations. I know how much the private sector contributed, how many civil society groups spent sleepless nights trying to answer the question, the consultation from the UN, how many government officials were accompanied by experts in the civil society. In other words, the Sustainable Development Goals can appropriately be claimed by civil society as being people's goal. Now, it is quite clear now that the new development paradigm calls for a multi-stakeholder partnership. As a faith-based organization, we are called to partner other religions if we are to address successfully the social and environmental challenges, because we are all mutually, socially, and environmentally accountable. So doing advocacy work for change is not only seeking for other people to change, it is also challenging myself to change. I'm not only asking others to change, I'm also asking myself if I have the appropriate attitude for the kind of change I want. Because our Gandhi said, you are the change you want. Be the change you want, and you will have the moral authority to ask others to change. This is where most of us civil society are often challenged by the people in government who say, well, hey, you are calling us for transparency. Are you transparent yourself? You are calling us for accountability. Are you accountable yourself? You want to a participatory process. Are you participating in your own organization? In other words, the new approach to advocacy becomes extremely demanding for all of us, starting with the civil society where we are. Next slide, please. But we know that enabling people to work together, especially if they hold very different views of the world or are even in conflict, can indeed be a very Herculean task. But believe you me, across the world, people are creating new coalitions, new alliances, and strategic partnership for joint transformational actions. Many inspirational examples emerge around the world of what can be achieved when people mobilize to take action together. You cannot simply say, because I'm coming from the Catholic Church, then I will change Nigeria. You may be protecting your small parochial interests, not for this, the real transformational change of the society. Transformational change of the society demand collaboration. Being invited to do advocacy today demands that we learn to give and receive, to go and let go. It calls for capacity to be listened to, but also capacity to listen. As I said, I needed to throw in some challenges to myself first, because don't think I'm just talking to you. I'm actually talking to myself first and to the organization I represent. Hopefully, I've been able to say a few words to you over there. I'm not afraid of you saying, we have come to JDPC, we know what you have been doing. Please, can you look at social things and change? Yes. So that when tomorrow we say we want to get the government to do something, we need to get the government to help us change. Government will listen to us when we go together as one voice. But to go together as one voice, we need to sit down together, abandon and sacrifice some of our small local interests and look at the global agenda. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope I did not take so much of your time. Hand over the mic to the facilitator to begin our exchange and sharing of ideas. I thank you once more for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Father Ngoyi. That has been really very informative. My name is Olaide Akoni. I'm a member of the Custos management team. That has been really very informative. Thank you again for stressing the importance of multi-stakeholder partnership, for the importance of introspection. Yes, as civil society, we're always demanding change from government, but we don't ask ourselves, are we willing to change ourselves? Are we willing to look inwards and make adjustments and actually listen to other people's points of views about issues? And again, you stress the importance of creative dialogue. That is really, really essential. I particularly like the example of pushing the disability law in Ogun State that you have shared, and how creative dialogue has helped to fast track the process. Thank you very much. I can see in the chat box people are saying wonderful presentation, very insightful. But just like was introduced earlier, this is a learning and sharing platform. And the whole idea of this webinar is to learn from one another, to get perspectives on what has worked in the area of legislative advocacy. We've heard from the JDBC experience. We would also welcome feedback from people on the chat who have either engaged with the National Assembly or their state level assembly in advocacy initiatives. How did that go? What worked for you? What are the lessons that we can learn in engaging with our parliamentarians? Because we find out that many civil society organizations are a bit reluctant to engage with the parliament, and we know that they are a key partner, and we really need to sit with them and understand where they're coming from, so that they also understand where we're coming from as we push for changes in laws and policies. So I'd like to see if there are people on the group in the call who would like to share some practical insights on the work that they have done as well before we move into the Q&A session with Reverend Father Ngoyi. So anybody who wants to share what has worked for you in terms of legislative advocacy in your state, in your location, and what were the lessons that you learned? So please identify with your show of hands so that we can call you up. If you could raise up your hands electronically, so we can call you to share your experiences before we move into the Q&A session. Anybody? Okay, I see a hand up, Kingsley Ewuro. Please tell us. So we'd like to know from you which state, what was the issue, how did you engage with parliamentarians, what worked well, and what are the challenges? So if any of the co-hosts can please help unmute Kingsley so that you can share very briefly. Kingsley, you have the floor. Okay, let me ask you to unmute.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my experience. Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, you are, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Kingsley Ewuro, and I work for a civil society group, a network of organizations called Budget Transparency and Accountability Initiative Nigeria. It's a network of civil society organizations that are based or that are focused on public finance management. Issues of the budget area for some people, especially around Cross River State, where I work. are issues where people don't go to because they see the budget as their thing or as the government thing. So in our engagement with the assembly, especially in getting certain sections of the budget be people-friendly or inclusive of citizens, we have had engagement, especially with the Finance and Appropriations Committee. And incidentally, most times, the speaker himself, who is very interested in such a committee. So one of the learnings we got, or in a particular situation, trying to move certain items in the budget to certain sections. For instance, Cross River prior to now had been a state that is known for tourism, or that is known for its tourism status. And a lot of money was pumped into the sector, the tourism, or that subsector of tourism, to grow the sector, and it ran into hundreds of billions. And the idea is, yes, once you have pumped in such money, we're trying to make an investment case for that sector to say, look, you cannot pump so much money into this sector and still put it, because the state budget is categorized into sectors. For now, then it used to be 4 sectors, but I think in the last budget, it's now 5 sectors. So there's the general admin sector, there is the economic sector, there is the regional sector, and then there is the social sector. So in the general admin sector, you have the office of the chief of staff, the governor's office, and and all that. In the economic sector, you have NDAs like the Ministry of Finance, the Budget Office, the Ministry of Commerce and Tourism, and then Investment. And then we noticed that the tourism sector, or the tourism subsector, was put in the general administration sector. And we made a case to say no, because you're pumping in so much money, and there are also returns on investment. For instance, tourists are expected to be coming in, paying fees, the hoteliers and all that and all that. And for those of us that know Cross River, around the Christmas, there's this Christmas season, or the Christmas festival and the carnivals and all that. And this is a huge investment that people come in and make a lot of money. So we made a case for them. And they were saying no, that it is the governor's idea and all that. But by the time we made a presentation to them on what is invested in the budget as it concerns tourism, and then what is also gotten by way of returns, by in terms of revenue, they now saw the need to say, yes, this is very key. But at some point, they were adamant. So we went through, beyond the fact that we engaged the legislators directly, we went through their aides. I think that's what we learned, that, yeah, engaging them directly wasn't helping too much. So we made our presentation, but also went through their legislative aides, who also provided us certain things. For instance, some of them were told, okay, this is what this person likes. This is where he likes to hang out. And this is when it is proper for you to talk with him. This is his active hours. This is his active moment. This is when, well, no matter what you tell him, he's lost. So this is these are information that we gathered in our engagement with them. But lo and behold, as we speak today, that was, the tourism sector, or tourism as it were, in Cross River State, was moved from the general administration sector to the economic sector, which is a huge driver of revenue for the state. I think that for us was a huge learning, or a good outcome that we got, even though it wasn't something that happened overnight. Thank you very much for that opportunity to share my experience.
Thank you very much, Kingsley, for sharing that. So for me, one of the things I picked was, even gathering intelligence from the legislative aides about, what works, how do you present your information, even if you might have very strong and relevant points, how to present it, where to present it, the timing of your messaging, is
Yes.
also a very critical point in engaging with legislators. So it's also important to do your homework and, ensure that you have allies within the legislative space who can put you through some of these issues. Thank you very much for sharing that. I see a comment in the chat box from, okay, it's a question in the chat box from Mr. thank God. It says, where is the place of lobbying, political economy, analysis, and conflict sensitivity in legislative advocacy engagement? And the second is, how can CSOs engage in collective advocacy in this era of COVID-19? Okay, so I believe that that can just lead us very quickly into the Q&A session, but just in case there are other people who also want to share practical experiences on what has worked in terms of legislative advocacy for them, the floor is open, but please raise up your hands electronically so that you can be able to be invited to share. But I would ask that Reverend Father Ngoyi please take that question. And then if there are other experts on the panel who can also share their thoughts on the place of lobbying, because yes, sometimes people ask questions, is lobbying allowed? Can we use donor funds? Because some donors will tell you, no, you can't use our funds for lobbying, and some of those issues. How, where do you draw the line? What works? How do we go around these issues, particularly within our context in Nigeria? So Reverend Father Ngoyi, do you want to please take that question, and then we can move on. If there are any other people who have answers or responses to this question, also please raise your hands electronically. So Reverend Father, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, my sister, thank you for allowing me to address that question. Definitely, I said there are several ways of killing a rat, if you want. Lobbying is known traditionally as one of the ways of engaging policymakers. Good rapport, good relationship. Remember, in my presentation, I spoke about establishing good relationships with not only the decision makers, but also with the influencers and the public. Now, I guess lobbying is part of the new type of relationship we need to establish. Remember, those we are trying to lobby are part and parcel of this society. So they should be happy that the majority of the society are also happy that they are not the only one obliged to build tall walls, tall fences, because they know people will be looking for them. So definitely my answer is yes, we need to lobby. But the question is, do we need people's money to lobby? Then my answer is, please act according to agreement. If your lobbying will demand some financial resources, you try to find them yourself. If you cannot find them yourself, you are applying for someone to help you. Discuss with that person. If he agrees, fine. If he doesn't agree, then you shouldn't do it. But I believe in our context, we can always know someone who knows the person we know can help us. That's our tradition. There is no way you will not reach there. Moderator, that's what I'm saying. Yes, we need to lobby. We need to reach out to the policymakers. We need to reach out to the decision makers. The means we are going to use to reach there is a different question. I stop there, Moderator.
Thank you so much, sir. I like that response. That there are many ways to kill a rat. People share examples of critical laws that were passed in the country that involved having to take lawmakers to a special place and having to ensure that things are explained to them, or taking them on, country visits to enable them see why they need to pass a particular policy. And in the end, that was done because they were exposed, they were enlightened, they got to know better, and so they were able to pass the law. So I think again it's a case by case basis, and we just need to know what works for us, within our context. I don't see any other questions, any other hands, or people who want to share their experiences or who have alternative views. Please, it's allowed to have alternative views in this discussion. We're all learning from one another, and we want to know what has worked for you in your own respective context in terms of legislative advocacy. Anybody else who we would like to share on the call? If I don't see any hands, I'm going to put some people that I know on this call on the spot so that they can also share their own personal experiences. And I see Mr. Francis Ademola. So sorry, sir, I didn't discuss this with you, but I'm going to put you on the spot for you to also share from your own wealth of experience, what works in terms of legislative advocacy, and also to respond to Mr. Thangod's question earlier. Would you like to share any thoughts? Mr. Ademola, please.
Sorry, Madam Moderator.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, sir. You have not answered the second question. How can civil society organizations engage in collective advocacy in the era of COVID-19?
You, Madam Moderator, you have said it yourself. We need to become more and more innovative. Especially, traditionally, oh, Mother Africa, we have been for so long copycats. Copycats, we want to do, because the Europeans who have been giving us money, they come with the calls for proposals. And the call proposal said, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. We need to go beyond that and engage innovatively ourselves, because the future we want to build is our own future and the future of our own children. We cannot remain to be copying them. Now, in the area of COVID-19, of course, COVID-19, whether we like it or not, the thing is much stronger over there than it is here. But we cannot simply say they are closing over there, therefore we should close over here. And of course, sorry, on a much lighter mood, I know that traditionally, people used to send people to talk for them. For example, someone is shy, he doesn't know how to talk to a girl he wants to marry. Someone intervenes. Did we pay such a person? We were not paying. So if we want to talk to our friends, pick phone calls. Call someone, brother, what do you think about this? Sister, what do you think about this? I mentioned during my presentation that we need to develop new relationships, including online. Let's be innovative. What are we doing now? This meeting we are holding now, my sister, traditionally we would have all met in Abuja. But here we are discussing, and we can reach some conclusions, some resolution on this forum. So that's what I call innovation. Let's make use of technology. We don't have permanently to be meeting physically. So the key word is what you have said, my moderator. Let's be innovative. Let's introduce technology in our way of engaging, and let's move on. Where we can meet physically, so be it. But when technology allows us to meet otherwise, let's move on. That's my take, madam.
Thank you very much, sir. I think one of the things that you have said that strikes a chord with me is the need for us to, put our differences aside and work more collaboratively. I think as civil society, we are often very protective of our respective tops and want to just keep on doing things our own way. But like you rightly said, we're stronger together. And it's important that we begin to, try to see things from other people's perspectives as well, you know, to say, okay, really, this person has a point, you know, how can we work together despite the differences that we have, you know? So those are very, very valid points. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, so we have in the chat box that for those of you who want to get certificates of participation, please kindly log into the link that has been provided. You need to provide your details, and you need to register there for you to be able to get the certificate. Mr. Shola Ajibona, I see your hand up, sir. You want to make a quick intervention?
Yes, thank you, lady. And thank you, Father, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule. And I've been following. I wasn't asleep. I was just trying to also change the slides earlier on. I wanted you to elaborate more on lobbying, because I think that for some people, maybe the derivative word or what they think about lobbying is you know, what they can give somebody to do something for them and all that. What can civil society organizations offer in return for getting their views, you know, pushed, for instance, in the legislature? I would like you to speak more on this, because we're talking of lobbying. You need to be able to give and take, not in terms of money and all that, but what can I offer you for you to do, for you to push my agenda for me in the legislature? I would like you to maybe shed more light on that. And then again, secondly, I would like to ask also, given your experience in JDPC and other organizations to which you are affiliated, we talked about multi-stakeholder, you know, approach to advocacy in such a way that you your parochial interests that people may perceive that you may have will not, you know, come to the fore. For instance, you mentioned, oh, so I'm from the Catholic Church and I'm pushing this agenda and all that. Let people not see that I have a, people may think that I have a parochial interest, or I'm from this ethnic group and people might think that I have a parochial interest. How can we ensure that such does not interfere or block your chances of pushing your agenda? Thank you.
Shola, those are heavy bullets you have just thrown now. No, win-win. Win-win. A win-win approach will always include some little losses from somewhere, because one will go up, another one will come down, and they will meet somewhere. If you engage in a fierce battle, you will either kill the other one to have everything to yourself, or you'll be killed and lose everything. The win-win approach is simply recognizing what this Paris Declaration of Climate Change is saying. Look, we have destroyed this world. Let's protect it. Those who have gone too far, come down. Those who are still very low, come up. Let's meet somewhere and live happily together. The legislators, I've mentioned it, I did not insist on it. If you see the kind of buildings people are putting up, fences are so tall, and then they put barbed wire and then electric wire to ensure that nobody climbs. So who is a prisoner, Shola? The prisoner is the person put inside the tall walls with electric wire who cannot go out. Advocacy, lobbying here simply means, look, you can have your money and live in a house with a very short wall and not feel threatened. But that would mean you lose a part of the money you are having to give to the one who is supposed to be your threat, so that we no longer be a threat. All of you will live with the minimum. I'm not saying we should all become Marxists, but I think what the Sustainable Development Goals are brought to us is that we should live and let live. And that's why this issue of lobbying and advocacy simply say, look, let's talk to them. Let's sit down with them. Let's creatively find ways of engaging them. Believe you me, those people are not made of iron hearts. They are human beings like we. But we put them so high that we even become afraid of engaging them. And we harm them. We hurt them by not considering them as human beings. So civil society needs to change also that approach. Fighting, challenging, going to war has not produced the result. They are our brothers. They are flesh and blood. Let's engage them. We need to change ourselves first, Shola. We need to change our conviction. They were saying Yoruba Kitanije. What we believe in is what we are going to take outside. That's why we need more and more space to speak to ourselves. Yes, we are going to gain through lobbying, making some sacrifices, accepting to sacrifice even if I'm not going to earn money. That's the problem we have. Because we are earning money by doing some NGO work, we forget that this NGO work is also a real mission. And if our goal is the good of the majority of us, religion will not count. I can assure you that there are times the Catholic Church was in partnership with Muslims because they had some joint interest, for example, in limiting reproductive rights. I'm sorry to mention that, but it may not be helpful for some people. But what I'm saying is, people who have common interests, they aggregate their interests and fight together. We should find that field of common interest to fight together. Again, as civil society, when we fight together, we are stronger and we obtain what we get by fighting together. Let me stop at that.
Thank you, sir. I'll let you pause and catch your breath. And I think that Chibuzo Orame has just re-echoed your last words about fighting together. But he said something that's very important. He said CSOs, no doubt, lack capacity to carry out strategic advocacy. I have seen repeated cases of advocacy methods that failed, and another organization, still applies the same failed methods to the same issue. Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll, and when I ask about it, it seems that, yeah. And when I ask about it, people keep saying, we apply the same methods. When I ask about it, I think it's important that civil society needs to be innovative and smart in advocacy projects. CSOs need to start thinking outside the box, and that is very important. You talked about what worked in the passage of the disability bill in Ogun State. Can you throw a bit more light on what exactly happened? I know you mentioned in the course of your presentation that you had a 3-day session and all of that. So in that 3-day session, did you bring together parliamentarians and people with disability and all the various stakeholders? How did you go about it so that, at least you give some insight to people who are, banging their heads about, oh, how do we even engage these people? Could you just throw a bit more light, sir, on the experience in Ogun State and what exactly you did and how you did it?
Okay, thank you, my sister. We used the women motto when they're fighting for gender. One of it I can remember now was never about me without me. Oh. We had been as CSOs. CSOs are the church people, good people. We're trying to do good for the poor people there, call them handicapped. Speaking for them. The people in government, those in power, couldn't care less. Until that fateful moment when all the executors of this, the handicapped, from the blind to the lame to the deaf, all of them came to JDPC, and we brought in some experts for training. Remember, these are people who are not proud of themselves, who don't feel their own sense of dignity. So you needed first, this time around, using religion to say, you are a child of God and God loves you as you really are. For them to own their own dignity. And then say, well, somewhere, somehow, there is an injustice being committed against you. But we cannot fight for yourself. You are the one sitting by the fire. You can tell us where it hurts, where it pains. So if you are interested in getting the change, then we are offering means of transportation, including drivers, but then, you know, people to meet for the change. They designed their own approach of the people they consider as influencers, of the people they consider decision makers, and of course, they knew that marketplaces and the streets were for the public. In fact, man, just yesterday, within Ijebode, the PWD organized a rally throughout Ijebode. On their own, they bought uniform for me. I did not pay a penny. One of the PWD, who is a tailor, sold it for me, and I put it on. These people went around following their lists. They took the vehicle, the pickup, to sensitize the people in the markets. They went to meet the traditional rulers. They went to the House of Assembly. They went to see the governor. All this without any of us following them. The only thing we did was to provide them with what they did not have, the logistic. Now, let me tell you, whenever these people reached the markets, people were first of all shocked to see that it was the disabled who were addressing them. Number two, whenever they reached traditional rulers, no single traditional ruler kept quiet. While they were there, they picked their phone, called the House of Assembly, called the governor. Kidon Shele, what's happening? These people are saying, these people are saying. And of course, the result was that the people in government started throwing balls at each other. The State House will say to the governor said to the State House. So at the end of the day, that was the conclusion. We gave logistic support, but they took action and acted on their own. And they claimed and are still claiming that change. Right now, in my office here, we have at least 4 disabled people who are full-time staff, paid like every other person. In the next week, we have a marriage to celebrate between one of the handicapped, one of the so-called normal women. So some changes are taking place. People are coming on their own. In other words, it takes us to believe that we are not benefactors, that people can drive their own agenda, and we should allow them to do so. Madam Chair, let me stop there.
That is very profound. Thank you, sir. I like that, people can drive change for themselves. And oftentimes, as civil society, we want to do good, we want to do good, we want to be charitable, but sometimes we don't know when to step back and actually allow people, to drive the agenda for themselves. And that is a classic case of, let the people who wear the shoes be the ones sitting at the table and speaking about the issues for themselves. That way, there's a lot more credibility than we speaking on their behalf. And clearly, that has, made a whole lot of difference and impact. And I'm sure that a lot of people are listening and taking notes. Thank you so much for sharing that and giving a classic example of nothing for us without us. Clearly, that is nothing for us without us. They are driving the agenda, and I hope we can take a lot of learning from that. There's another question for you, sir, and it's about, in your efforts working with civil society to achieve advocacy objectives, what main challenges do you encounter, and what creative ways did you apply to overcome the challenges? I know that, some of it you have probably shared in this experience on the disability bill, but are there other experiences, or challenges that you have identified in working with civil society, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Wow. Oh my God, this is a real hot seat.
Yes, I hope you are drinking water as well, sir.
Yes, I do. I'm going to charge you 2 bottles of small bottle of water.
No problem.
Honestly, sir, you mentioned it, my sister, about soul searching. JDPC is known, we must not hide it. In Ogun State, JDPC is probably the largest NGO. And of course, with a lot of acumen and publicity, whatever you like it. Now, that is a challenge on its own, because we have the rooms, we have offices. The first thing we did was, look, let any NGOs wanting to have a meeting, whatever, use our facilities without paying a penny. Because we built this. The challenge, therefore, was internal first, to convince our own staff that we need to carry along other civil society. You said it yourself, don't start with me. The tendency to say, look, we are on our own, we cannot give what belongs to us. That parochial approach, when I mentioned parochial approach, it was not only for others, it was for ourselves first. We needed to go beyond that. And today, we have become somehow an umbrella for other civil society that identify themselves with JDPC. But again, bringing civil society together, it takes a lot of humility. You allow them to come in without trying to hold on to leadership. Welcome them and allow others within your area to lead, so that they feel also important. One of the things that is killing collaboration between civil society is that the groups that know and they are bigger than the others, they don't want to let go. They want to incorporate everything, therefore making others feel so small, so unimportant. And of course, as I said, any small group that does not feel included can destroy the action of all the others. It cannot achieve the change alone, but it can destroy the kind of change others want to achieve. Therefore, the importance of that multi-stakeholder partnership, it's hovers first and foremost on the bigger NGOs that have to cover themselves with a sense of humility and service. If we don't do that, then we may be moving toward the disappearance of the civil society. So the call is on the leadership of the NGOs that are relatively more stable and more performing than the others to receive them and accommodate them. Give and take. We cannot say because we are bigger than them, let's have everything, making them to remain slaves to the bigger NGOs. I hope I'm able to say something over there, my dear.
You have said so much, sir. I was just like, and taking copious notes, because it's the reality, and it's a struggle even for the NGOs, like you said earlier, that we need to oftentimes always do some introspection, to ask ourselves, how are we being perceived? Because you might try to be big brother, and still you want to be big brother to all NGOs or CSOs in your space, and that big brother role might be misconstrued, and you also have to be careful about how you do it, and how you communicate what you do. Kingsley has made a very important point in the comment in the chat box. He says that, I like the part where Father said, you let people drive the change for themselves. I have had experiences where people say that we didn't ask you to do what you do, so why are you doing it? And I think for us as civil society, we also need to be mindful about the message we're communicating. Who really owns the message? Did they send us that message? Are we, or is it something that we think, oh, it's a nice to do, but our constituency really thinks, look, this is not how we want it communicated, or these are not our issues, or these are not our priorities. So we need to be careful in our desire to do good and change the world, to ask ourselves, really, who is sending us out? Is this our personal agenda, or is this the community agenda, or who are we really representing? Is it our own interest, or the interest of the larger society, or the people who really need the change? And that consultation with our constituencies is something that we need to do often to really understand, what are the issues, and whether we are truly representative of the issues that we claim that we're pushing for. Thank you so much, sir. I don't know if there are any other questions, experiences that people want to share before
Can
we
I
wrap
just
up?
say something?
Yes,
Can I just
sir.
something about, the first quadrant, when you have the public on the horizontal axis and the awareness on the vertical one. Most of the time, when we say we are creating awareness, this is an issue we have to be very, very careful. Honestly, this one now, please, I can proudly talk about experience. We often deceive ourselves by thinking that holding one conference, one seminar, we have told people everything about what they needed to know about this issue. Issues over which we spend years in universities without ever exhausting them. We hold a 2-hour, 3-hour seminar, we come out and claim that we have created the awareness. For God's sake, how can you claim to have created the awareness over a critical issue that will demand that the influencers and the decision makers take a decision? How can you claim to have allowed people to have full knowledge of the issue in 2 hours? So I'm coming back to the issue Kingsley has raised. Kingsley Woro. When you say people will ask, yes, indeed, and rightly so. If a change has to be sustainable, the people have to own it. If people don't own the change, we have done charity, it will stop when we stop. A change that will endure, a change that will last, a change that is sustainable must be owned by the people. And the consequence of it is, we need to ask the question and answer it in the positive. Have people understood deeply the issue at stake? Because it's only when they have understood deeply the issue, they can decide whether to accept what you have said or not. But can they really understand the issue at stake after 2-3 hours? Madam Moderator, I had stopped there.
Well, but sir, you have raised a very important point. So I get you when you say that, oh, do people really understand the issues? But here I am. I'm a typical CSO or NGO. I have been given a 1-year grant. And in the proposal I submitted, I had said, oh, we're going to conduct advocacy. It's going to take 6 months or it's going to take 9 months. I'm going to do A, B, C, and report to my donor. And 6 or 7 months down the line, I'm still doing awareness. I'm still trying to get people. The bureaucratic hurdles in my way are, are a big challenge. And I have not met my deliverables. What do I do? Because this advocacy process is taking much longer than I anticipated or I budgeted for. How do I manage all of this dynamics? Given what you are saying that, oh, I can't just do a 2-hour session and anticipate that, oh, everybody understood my issue.
My sister, my immediate reaction is, we have come to a point where we need to face our own reality. Do the founders really care about the sustainability of the change we want? Do they? Ourselves who are applying for this project, do we really take time to check whether the people have understood or not? Or we're just concerned with statistics? We have trained 155 people, 75 were women, 76 were men. Therefore, to a gender balance. The lecturers spoke about this, they spoke about that. People were very happy. Lunch was this, lunch was that. Isn't that the report we sent?
It is.
Is that the change we want?
No, it's not.
So I really think, look, my sister, I am personally getting old in this job. I've come to certain personal conviction that the change we want, we must be it. We must be that change. And we should find ways of checking what have people understood. If they have really understood, have they believed us? If they have believed us, are they ready to take action? But do we have time to do all this? Or we are just also, I'm sorry to say that, jobbers. We have a job, we want to maintain the job. Do we really care about the change that is happening out there?
Wow, very profound statements and thought-provoking. And for me, I think what I'm taking away from this conversation is we can't afford to design advocacy initiatives as checkbox, like, okay, this activity is done, this activity is done, this activity is done. We really need to interrogate what is the change that we want and what is the sustainable change. Is that change if it's going to take 3 years to achieve that change, then we need to be committed to it. We can't just say, oh, we want this done, and because we've done ABC, that's it, So we really need to think again, what is the change that we want as we're looking at advocacy? What is the change that we want to achieve? And how do we get there realistically and working with partners, hearing from the people, and really being committed to this cause. You know, that's really what advocacy is all about. I saw Mr. Ajibona's hand. I don't know whether you have some final comments, because I'm just going to hand over to you, and just to say again a very big thank you to you, Reverend Father Ngoyi, for the wealth of wisdom and the very practical insights that you have shared on this call with us. I'm sure that a lot of people have learned a lot. I have personally learned a lot from you, and thank you again for sharing from your wealth of wisdom on this very important issue. I'm going to hand over now to Mr. Ajibono, and he will take us forward.
Yes, thank you, Lady. I see a hand up, one Hassan Ibn Atahir. Maybe you want to take that before you hand over to me. And in addition to that hand, I would like Father Ngoyi as a last word before as a last word from him. What would be your advice to that nascent community-based organization trying to advocate for some kind of change in their own local areas, whatever that agenda might be? What would be your advice, in their own communities, working in those small areas? What would be your advice to them? So in addition to what Hassan Ibn Atahir has to say. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So Hassan, please, can you make your intervention quick? I'm asking you to unmute. Sir, Reverend Father Ngoyi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry, we have a network problem now. Well, good afternoon. Actually, mine is just a comment, and then probably appreciate the presenter. The topic is rather very important and very necessary for the work of CSOs, especially when you consigned advocacy to change, to make a very vital change. So we are very glad. But my request here is that I don't know if the paper presented can be shared, because the paper is, the topic is very enriched, which can help us to put one or two things in place regarding our advocacy. That's just what I want to add to this discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Hassan. Just to note again that you need to register in the chat box. There's a link. Please register in the chat box. For all those who registered, the presentation will be sent to them by email. So please ensure that you register in the chat box, and you will get the presentation.
I did so.
Okay, don't worry. So the presentation will be sent to you. Thank you very much. Okay, so Reverend Father, please could you respond to Mr. Ajibona's question on your parting shot for that nascent CSO who wants to get into advocacy and doesn't really know how to go about it? Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me? If it is a parting shot from Olaide Akani, or
no, a parting shot from you, sir.
No, I mean, Olaide Akani has been bombarding me with all sorts of questions, and no, honestly, it has been a wonderful. At a certain age, you start looking forward to legacy. He said, what is behind you? And one of my concerns has always been those of us who are working with international agencies and donors and whatever. How do we prioritize the effective grassroots empowerment programs to ensure that we don't try to effect a change, systemic change in a year or two? That's an illusion. But of course, when reports have to be written to Baltimore, to Brussels, or London, or Paris, they are concerned about 1 or 2 years and maximum 3 years. But societies systems don't change like that. But the small community trying to achieve change, and that's the major problem. You want to achieve change in a small community where you are having a local government, you are having a state, you are having a federation. we had the gully. We have a gully at Awakoro where rain has destroyed houses. It's a small community. The local government doesn't have that capacity to change that. It takes the state. The state will tell you they don't have the kind of money to deal with this gully. They need help from the federation. How will that small community address this issue? This is where partnership should come in. And I think the civil society should organize itself around this kind of partnership to become the real voice of the voiceless, or the empowerer of the voiceless to become voiceful, giving them their voice, the voice that belongs to them, with the structures and superstructures have taken away mercilessly. And my advice, most of those people, they may be people who have not even gone to school, who may not even understand the issue of advocacy, talk less of lobbying. But you see, if we at the civil society level are not very clear about advocacy and lobbying, how much do you expect of those villages, those communities? These are people who are suffering without even knowing what they are suffering. Some of them come into this world, live and die without knowing why they are living and when they are dying. Because when they came into this world, nobody knew, nobody cared. And when they leave, nobody knows, nobody cares. I think we have great challenges here as civil society to organize and mobilize ourselves to return the voice to where it belongs. But that will require a soul searching, internal re-examination, and a change in our ways and manners of working. I've enjoyed this webinar. I'm really looking forward to further partnership to ensure that the voiceless are not replaced by the voice of the voiceless, but that the voiceless become themselves voiceful. So thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, sir. So the voiceless need to be voiceful. We need to organize so that we do not agonize, and we need to leverage on partnerships. I think those are powerful parting shots that we all need to reflect on in our various spheres of influence and be deliberate about taking action on those words. On that note, I would hand over to Mr. Jibono. He will take us on the next steps in this discussion.
Yeah. So thank you, Laide. Thank you very much. And once again, I thank Reverend Father John Patrick Ngoye for making time out of his very, very busy schedule to be with us this morning. Father, we really appreciate. We thank you, and we wish you all the best in all the activities that you have. Thank you for making the time for us.
Welcome.
And to all the presenters, I thank you all for being part of this. Again, I will reiterate what I said. Please, the attendance sheet is still on. Please ensure that you register using the attendance sheet. The certificates of attendance and the sharing of the presentations will be made to those who spend at least 1 hour on the webinar. So please bear that in mind. I also use the opportunity to remind people that we have an advert out there. It was in the Daily Trust and Guardian, and it will be closing on the 12th of December for those who want to participate in our OD and advocacy marketplace program, where those who are selected will undergo a 6 months training program that will lead to some kind of certification that we will provide on the project to make them to train them on organizational development and advocacy, so that they'll be able to provide their capacity support to organizations. The idea is to make such experts in OD and advocacy accessible to most civil society organizations. So the advert is still out there for those who are interested. They should please apply. It is closing on the 12th of December. And then again, I want to use the opportunity to apologize to those who participated in last webinar who are yet to receive their certificates. And we have some logistics problem. It is being sorted, and those certificates will be reached them, before these ones come out. We'll also be sending out feedback forms, please, on our performance on the webinar, on how we do things, whether we need to do things we need to do better, things we need to stop doing. Your feedback will be mostly appreciated. So we'll be looking forward to that when you receive it, and then of course we'll send you the certificates when you return the feedback form. We're hoping that in January we'll bring you another of our webinar series, which will be on the employment and labor laws for civil society organizations. And so I think this might be of interest to everyone who wants to know about employment and labor laws in civil society organizations in Nigeria. So that will be coming up later in January, possibly by 25th or 27th. We're going to advise you of those dates. So we thank you all for being part of this. We appreciate the time you have spent with us, and we hope that you have gained one or two things from this. The idea behind some of these webinars is that sometimes what we say may not be need to do if you are an expert in that area. But if you listen well, an idea may come to you, which may help you to transform your organization or to improve yourself personally. So we are hoping that by doing this, some of these things will happen. And so we look forward to having you again in January. And we thank you all very much, and we wish you a Merry Christmas in advance, Happy New Year in advance. And it is bye-bye from us, from Custos, from Scale, from the Scale project at this time. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Thank you.